morning, good evening, everyone. This is Luda Kopkina at GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News, where we rate news essential, important, or optional. Today, I have John, Tim, Ankash from our regular crew, and a wonderful guest today, Brenda Kirk. She was an EVP and CIO at a major bank in Cincinnati area, or Cleveland area in Key Bank, and a leader in the financial sector. We're really excited to have Brenda here. Welcome, Brenda. She's now advising companies of all sizes on adopting AI. So we're looking forward to your insights. If you'd like to follow along, please check the articles at gaiinsights.com/articles. Let's proceed to the first article. Ankash, please.
So thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from ZAI or Zipu AI, and it is about their new model called GLM 4.7, where they are advancing the coding capability.
Yes, Ankash. Do you mind reviewing this since you are monitoring a lot of those models and the advances?
So, Luda. So basically, I think just a few months back, they had launched GLM 4.6, and we saw GLM Vision Model 4.6, I think, last week only. So this 4.7, they are sort of cementing it as a new coding partner for everyone. And it does really well on SWE benchmarks and some of the other benchmarks. It's on par with Gemini Pro 3, then your OpenAI 5.1, and then your Claude Sonnet 4.5. What's different here is, so they have been using this interleaved thinking method, where the model thinks before every response and tool call, and now they have enhanced it with preserved thinking and turn level thinking. So what it does is, once the model has thought about a particular thing, so it retains that thinking block and use it again when it's required. And the turn level thinking is, you can enable or disable it to save on trade latency, cost, and accuracy. So those are the thinking modes that are part of this model, and they make it very efficient and cost effective to work with. They have given some examples in this as well, which look really good. So from an open source perspective, open weights model, the weights are already there on Hugging Face. You can use it through their API or open router. So all in all, I think from an open source model perspective, it's an important announcement.
Okay, an important from Ankash. Brenda, what were your thoughts?
I thought it was optional unless you are actually evaluating open source LLMs. So unless you're deep into that assessment, I would give this an optional.
Okay, optional from Brenda. John, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I was optional as well. I mean, it's incredible. It's part of this overall theme we talked about the dominance of the Chinese in the open models, and the benchmarks are impressive. Again, they're right up against Anthropic, DeepSeek, OpenAI, in terms of things like the SWE bench verified test. It's right in the running. Now, this whole thing about maintaining a reasonable cost of inference as you grow your business or starting up a business, I think is going to be important. But for me, this is optional.
Thank you. Okay, Tim, we're going optional. Okay with that?
Optional, definitely. Yep.
Okay.
Everyday miracle.
Everyday miracle. Yeah, but the innovation, they keep pushing on the 4.5. They had 3 major innovations. On the 6, they had 1, and here's another one. So it's fascinating that they keep pushing on the frontier.
Yeah, as John said, these Chinese models are very innovative. They move fast, but we still don't know enough about uptake and about which features really matter. So we just don't know how to evaluate this.
Yeah. Okay. Optional it is. Let's proceed to the next one. Ankash, please.
Luda. So the next one comes from Anthropic, and it is a case study about how Binti modernizes child welfare systems with Claude.
Yeah, it's an interesting case study in a very where AI is needed sector. Brenda, what did you think about this one?
I thought it's a great story. It's AI for good, without a doubt, Luda. I completely agree with that. It definitely reads like one. There's not a lot of technical details. The capabilities that they're using are widely available, so I think it's a feel-good story, but it's probably optional for our AI leader. I do think that the outcomes that they've actually produced in this particular customer story are lackluster. So it was interesting to me that was their highlight for AI for good. I thought they could actually do a little bit better. Those capabilities are also widely available in healthcare. So they've been around for a very long time. Tim's on the line, so he can talk about just how long they've been around. But I was a little bit disappointed, I think, that this was what Claude chose. As they're coming out heavy. I think they could do better in a space that really could use it. So optional for our AI leader for sure.
Okay, John, what did you think? It's an important.
Yeah, I was leaning more toward important, just because it's in the area that I think is really in need, as Brenda said, really in need of help. Although Brenda, you did highlight, it is kind of lackluster. I mean, just a small amount of improvement, really. So you convinced me into optional.
Good convincing argument, Brenda. Tim, what did you think?
Yeah, I was sort of, I think, in the same space. I really wanted to like this article a lot. It is, as Brenda noted, a feel-good article, and they do get some substantial improvement in one of the most important use cases, I think, which is the management of text and words, especially around documentation of interactions in a service business. So law, consulting, all the things, financial services, all the things we've talked about. And that's one of their main use cases. So that's great. So here's another case study that says, hey, we did this and it worked and it's great, and we saved a little bit of time. But to Brenda's point, not that much time and no details. So once again, we have to pound the table and say, OpenAI, Anthropic, go read the AWS case studies and follow their model.
Yeah.
So I'd say optional.
It gets some more information into it. I really wanted it to be more meaty. Okay, we seems like we're going optional, even though we all want it to be important. Ankaj.
Optional for me as well, Luda.
Okay, Paul.
Optional. Yeah, optional.
Okay,
Luda, I think this could be a topic for a hackathon, though. So maybe we repurpose this article for that.
That's a good idea. Okay, so optional it is, even though the desire to be important. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay, the next one comes from the factory, and it's about evaluating context compression for AI agents.
Yeah, so Factory is actually a company that started in 23, raised about 100 million. They're from very good VCs. They are focusing on the software development, model agnostic, but all kinds of tools related to software development lifecycle. And here's an interesting insight into how do you do this in this particular area. What did you think about this, John?
Yeah, I was going to give this an optional. I mean, this is an interesting technique that they put forth about when you're dealing with long context, especially around evaluation of code. Obviously, when you're doing refactoring or any kind of analysis of code, the context window often comes into play, and the size of the context window. So there's this notion of doing OpenAI and Anthropic do compression, and this is making the case that the way Factory does compression has more structure in it and allows it to deal with longer context windows and better and less reuse, less recalculation of tokens and and recalculation of what the compressions are, so that they can fit bigger, context into the window, and they show that this slightly improves, reliability and performance and so forth. So interesting incremental, improvement in the context of dealing with large contexts, but for me, optional for our AI meetup.
Yeah. I mean, it is forwardable to the developers because it's interesting. They're above what OpenAI and Anthropic can do in the software space, even with the advanced tools. So an interesting development. Tim, what did you think?
I was optional on this as well. It could be interesting, but as John noted first, it's an incremental improvement, and they struggled on file manipulation. Let me just cut it short. The larger point is the vendors right now, I think, are way ahead of the users and the customers, and so nobody's really complaining about Claude Code and OpenAI Codex. In fact, they're saying they're fantastic at even the open source models. So this is an improvement, but an improvement to what? And I think that it could be great down the road, but it's incremental. And right now, I think nobody's really complaining. So I'm not sure where their market is.
Well, Tim, I think this is the first world problem equivalent over in coding. I think there's probably 30 coders that do frontier models in the Valley complaining about this, and that's who they're focused
exactly.
on.
Yeah.
But this tool in the hands of really sophisticated developers can differentiate them for sure. But
maybe,
very narrow.
but both Codex and Claude Code are getting much better at long context from what I hear and from what I read.
Yeah.
So it's just not clear how much value there is to this, and that this approach isn't going to be superseded by another approach 2 weeks from now. So just unclear. And another vendor, most organizations, if you're within an organization, even if you're not, there's so many vendors, why are you going to use this vendor versus that vendor? Yeah, okay, so they got long context, but what about everything else? If you really, to me, the biggest market by far right now is probably people like me and maybe Brenda, people who would love nothing better than to do a little more coding and have some understanding of it, but really are not going to waste their time writing HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And that's a sweet spot right now, because I can do that already. It's a little painful, but I can do it. And if there was a tool that made it even better, so this is why I think the N8Ns of the world are making a lot of progress. So I think more tools like that are going to be much more popular than this kind of stuff. This is pretty niche.
Yeah, it's very niche. Brenda, what were your thoughts?
I agree. So I won't be horribly repetitive. The only thing I did really appreciate here is the transparency in this article. So I did like that. It was a very easy read, but I do think it's optional.
Well, and but not only easy read, at the bottom, I really appreciate they put the prompts in, the evaluation criteria.
It was good.
Yeah. So I thought this is something.
Of course, they might have cherry picked a little. We don't know. It's their tests and their results. So.
But it's
and they won everything that was important. So I'm always a little skeptical of those kind of papers.
Okay, Ankaj, anything to add?
No, optional for me as well.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Optional it is. Let's proceed to the next one, please.
Okay, the next one comes from OpenAI, and it is about evaluating chain of thought monitorability.
Yeah, a longish article with a lot of understanding of how to go through it, the increase the monitorability. What did you think about this one, Tim?
Well, I think this is probably still optional. I could lean towards important because this is such an important topic area. And they did a reasonable job with another approach of how to figure out what these models are doing, because at the end of the day, this has been a huge problem in my mind from the start, is we have a very powerful tool that's fundamentally a black box, even to the vendors for the most part. And that's a problem. So I'm happy to see they're studying it. This is a reasonable way to try and study, but it's really not that informative at the end of the day. They're just taking advantage of what everybody's already moved to, which was sort of serendipitous in and of itself, which is the approach of chain of thought reasoning. So it's okay. It's a research paper. I'm glad they're doing it. I hope they do more. I've said this many, many times, there's a big gap. When you have a tool this powerful and you don't really know how it works, I get nervous. But I'd still give it an optional because I'm not sure what you do with it. And I'm not sure it affects the day-to-day life of the AI leader.
Pankaj, what did you think? How can it impact the LLMs going forward? You thought, because you suggested it in the set of articles.
Luda. So, Luda, as Tim mentioned, it's a very sort of simple thing that they are doing with chain of thought monitorability now. So we have seen or read about thinking traces with chain of thought, right? And what they are doing it, they are going through those traces and figuring out whether the model is doing any thinking in private or not, or whether it is sharing everything with us or not, right? So for an enterprise leader perspective, I think this can be important when they are using these models, because to understand their chain of thought, how they are arriving at a particular solution. So when we are doing or when we are using these behind the scenes in operating environments where it's just an API call and then those thinking traces come to the leader or the operations team and they are able to make sense of it. So from a standardization perspective, from a process optimization perspective, this can be very important, where you can be sure that, okay, you are evaluating these models and every time the thinking process or the traces, they come in a certain degree of certainty, right? They are probabilistic model, they can't be same every time. But if we are sure that they would come in this degree of certainty, then it can be a very good option for an AI leader to track this from an observability perspective, from evaluation perspective. But on the other hand, just being skeptical here, it seems like a ploy from OpenAI to increase the use of tokens, inference tokens, because their IPO is coming up. So that's just me being skeptical. But yeah, I think this can be an important read for an AI leader.
Interesting. So, Brenda, since you are working with a number of companies and have a front seat on how they are adopting AI, what do you think?
I agree with Ankaj, and I find your last bit quite humorous. I also agree with that sentiment as well. It might be a play from OpenAI, but I do think that the more transparency we can create through education of those AI leaders, specifically around trust, observability, and monitoring, I really think it's important. Even if those are tools that they don't end up employing at large, giving them the capacity really to understand how this is happening behind the scenes, particularly as it relates to private thoughts. Where I'm hearing more of that in common conversation. I'm a little bit surprised, but I am hearing that in common conversation. So I think it's an easy read. It's very transparent. I think it's a good
Good
few
message.
minutes for an AI leader. I would leave it as important.
Okay. John, what did you think?
Yeah, I was on the fence between optional and important. I think that it's interesting. One of our clients does explainable AI, and they do it by having the full value-added, context. So they go from data all the way through inference, and they can trace it back. The problem with these LLMs is that the training stuff is relatively opaque. So I think it's interesting that they decided to cut in on the chain of thought reasoning, the post-training inference, because that modality actually kicks out a control stream, if you will, the ability to see what kind of reasoning it has. So because of the architecture of these things, this is the most transparency we have on the inference process, right? Because it actually, as it does the quote unquote chain, right? It's coming to conclusion, next that becomes apparent. That's not true within the trained model, right? Because those weights are not available. The path through the weights is not available to us on a consistent basis. So, it's the control point that the kludgy. I mean, we could have built these models with more self-awareness about how they actually did it, but we didn't. Not to channel my inner Tim, but maybe a little bit of research and thought on the front end might have helped here. It's the most attractive control point. It's an ongoing problem, so that's why I was on the fence. At the same time, this seems pretty, self-grandizing, they top all the stuff they measure.
That's true. That's true. But Ashish pitching in saying it can be leveraged for error tracking and the like. So it's an important topic. Okay.
Yeah.
I tell you, if I were an attorney,
I wish I would take half the inference speed for twice the level of monitorability baked into the systems.
Yeah, well,
True.
But they're not going to do that. Their incentive is all the other way.
But rationality is getting.
I know.
The
Well, the incentives are all the other way
rationality
because there's no
like this,
profit in that. In fact, there's losses in that for a while. Maybe ultimately profits, but there's definitely losses for a while.
Okay, Paul, I am going to go, since I have the chalk, go important on that one. You probably go triple optional, but I'd love to hear what you think.
I'll support your chalk, Luda.
Aha! Well, thank you. I will side with Brenda, and I think this is important overall because it can be used for, and Ashish, be used for error detection and tracking. There's a lot of value as you are working with these black boxes, essentially. So this is a view into insights of those. Okay, important it is. Let's proceed to the next one.
The next one comes from Epoch AI, and they talk about the changing drivers of LLM adoption.
Yeah, a survey of 3,000 plus people. John, what did you think?
Yeah, for me, I was going to give this optional. I mean, I think we know that, consumption has gone up. Things are pretty sticky. We do see deepening use. The articulation of that deepening use may or may not be apparent within things like they look at a bunch of different studies like the RAMP survey, because the RAMP survey looks at, what's done within a company, and then people also bring their own AI to work or keep it, they use the free version or paid version outside of these measures. So I didn't really see what an AI leader would do with this. We have increasing use, people who use it more, and everything kind of triangulates on that. So I didn't see a lot new here, and I was going to give it an optional for our AI leader.
Okay. But interesting bits of information, right? Where it is currently as we're monitoring. Paul, what did you think?
Yeah, I was. It was. Right, let me articulate. I was optional. I think these are trends we've seen. I think the trend that they have with data saying that all the major LLMs together have been stagnant, and the growth is. I need to see more data before I believe that. I did like the graph later on in the article where they're just talking about Copilot. Is at the lowest. I mean, Tom Davenport wrote just a scathing article yesterday about Copilot, calling Copilot the Bing of AI because everyone hates it so much. But I didn't see enough that moved the needle, so optional.
Okay. Brenda, what were your thoughts?
I agree with optional. The one thing I would say is I would have passed this. I will pass this article along to a few leaders. Simply just to reinforce the concepts that are here. I think we are hearing it. I think there's a little bit of uncertainty and doubt among leaders that people are really doing bottoms-up adoption of AI. Would they really bring that in? And I think the reality is it's happening every day. So as much as I think it has to be an opportunity for leaders to build longer tables, not taller walls. And I feel like this is a good way for them to see that this is actually happening in a more objective way than I told you so. So I may pass it along, but I think it's optional overall.
Well, that's interesting, Brenda. If you pass it along, I would rate it at least important. Because
and I would rate it important.
Yeah, I mean the fact that you, anyway, serving a need for you as a technology leader, that might even pop up to essential if you say, hey, look, this is something that today I think needs reinforcement. I mean, there's decent data here. It's not a bad, meta-analysis of a bunch of stuff. So,
yeah. I mean, John, forwardability we've used repeatedly as a metric of value from an AI leader to keep their team, their VP of marketing, their CISO, their.
That's who I'm thinking of, Paul. Yeah. That's the person I'm thinking of.
Isn't that funny?
Is that head of marketing?
Right. And I was actually rating it important because, as you know, I've started this organization, Women Applying AI. It's a nonprofit. And there's a tidbit in here at the end, right? So they talk about gender, and they find that it makes very little difference whether it's male or female that are using the tools. And it was very skewed to men initially, but now it's even. So that really feels much better. So I was going to forward this to many people because of that. So for me, it's an important data point. All right, Ankaj.
I was optional on this one, Luda, but I can support important.
All right, going important on this one. Let's proceed to the next one.
Okay, the next one comes from Microsoft, and it's a case study about how Denon is transforming critical business operations at scale with Microsoft AI and autonomous agents.
Yes, Brenda, what did you think about this use case?
I want to channel Paul there and say this is the bang of case studies. It's not well written. I think it may have been written by a bot and maybe not reviewed. It's lacking quite a bit of technical detail, and the outcomes are not, again, terrific. So as much as I love to see a success story, I'm not sure that this is it. So I was not impressed by this. I think that the rollout of Copilot is interesting and common. I don't think that the way that they've done it is remarkable in any way. The human in the loop stops, not a natural value add. So this is not actually something I would want to pass along. So I'm going to give this an optional.
Yeah, I was actually triple optional. I was very disappointed.
Yeah.
I so much wanted to like it, and I didn't like it at all.
Tim, I feel a little Scroogey here, but sorry.
Tim, what did you think?
Yep, totally agree.
Totally agree.
Yep.
John, agree?
Yeah, I used to run thought leadership for Price Waterhouse, and we had a phrase we called the dullinator, where we would take a good article and we'd give it the risk and quality, and they would make it generic and dull. This looks like it went through the dullinator at Microsoft.
Yeah, I thought it went through legal or something like that. Yes, certainly. Okay, so this is optional as we're preparing the scorecard. Let's do the announcements. Paul?
Yeah, a couple announcements. Last night we had a great learning lab. John went through 10 predictions for 2026, and we had a robust discussion. That's now posted on our YouTube channel. So if you search for GAI Insights on YouTube, you'll find it. Second, we have our weekly free Copilot training today. Some people, that is the only secure employee chatbot they have. So that's at noon Eastern. And then third, we are off Thursday and Friday. So no news this Thursday, Friday, or next week, Thursday, Friday.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Thank you, Brenda, for joining. Very good points. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Kevin, Ashish, and everyone else for listening and participating. Today, we have 2 importance and the rest are optional. And we bid you a good day. We'll see you tomorrow. This will be our last day of the week before the holidays. Thank you all very much and see you tomorrow.
Great. Thank you, Brad.